Okay, go ahead, Dr. Martin.
Okay, I call this meeting to interview Ward 4 candidates for the Ward 4 position in session. Okay. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Basine?
Here.
Hampson?
Here.
Clanton?
Present.
Gabriel?
Present.
Jordan?
Here.
Martin?
Here, present. Okay. We have the first candidate enter. How are you? I'm well. Welcome. Good to see you. Go ahead and have a seat over in the chair. There's a glass of water for you and a notepad and pen in case you need to take any notes. So we're gonna, the protocol for the interview is we have 30 minutes.
Okay.
And we're each gonna ask a question. And so we ask that you're concise so that we can try to stay on time.
Okay.
What ideally I'd like for there to be a few minutes for you to ask questions if you have them.
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to jump right in, and we're going to begin with Dr. Gabriel.
Good morning. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, wonderful.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Well, we welcome you. Please start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and why you wish to serve on the Norfolk School Board.
I'm Benita Anthony. I am a resident of Norfolk, born and raised, bred by Norfolk Public Schools. Right now I'm a college administrator at Old Dominion University. I'm a program manager and academic advisor for the Computational Modeling and Simulation Engineering Department, say that 10 times. And I have been working in education more than 20 plus years. I've taught every level from K4 all the way through K20. So here I am today is because I have to be here. The work that I do is I serve my community, and so I cannot turn my back on the crisis that we face that has been exacerbated by the public health emergency caused by COVID-19 pandemic. I am aware of what's happening not only in the community, but how it's impacting our students and their parents and their guardians. So here I am because I have the privilege of working in this capacity. I have the knowledge, skill, and ability. I also have the capacity and the ability to do something because our community needs help, and because I am available, I decided that I was going to throw my hat in the ring to be able to be that connector with the community and with the school board, because education is pretty much the bedrock of any community. And so here I am. I cannot turn my back on what's happening with our educators who are feeling overworked, overstressed, our students who are impacted by so much, not only displacement, but they're impacted by what's happening at home, what's happening with their mental health. I cannot turn my back on what's happening with our district, with the number of retirements, the shortages, and the great resignation. I cannot turn my back on all of the challenges that are happening, not just with Norfolk, but all across the nation. So I decided that since I have the capacity and the ability to do something about it, I cannot turn my back. I have to be here. This is the work that has been placed in my hands. I have a calling to serve my community.
Thank you. Okay, up next we have Carlos with our second question.
All right, welcome. So what is your understanding of the role of a school board member, and how do you intend to accomplish it?
My role as a school board member is to act in unity with the rest of the board to implement policy, rules, and regulations that the impact the day-to-day operation of a school district. But I'm not just a policymaker or an administrator. I'm also an advocate for the community.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm next. My question is, working with a team of individuals with diverse perspectives can sometimes result in conflicts.
Sure.
Describe a situation in which you had a conflict with a team member and what strategies you used to resolve the conflict.
Welcome to my day-to-day. Because you know that sometimes when you are in meetings with faculty, there is a convergence of differences of opinion. But I wanted to go back to way back into my work history as an engineer when I was in charge of conducting a meeting of all stakeholders, including Air Traffic Association and all the stakeholders who were going to sign over a large radar system over in Oceana. And so, of course, people were coming to the table, looking at the data. We've gotten checked out, and of course, there's fighting across the table. However, my signature was required in order to move this particular system over into air traffic control so that it can operate. So in the midst of conflict, sometimes you have to step back and away from the situation. So I said, you know, if we're going to continue in this fashion, I cannot operate this way. So I had to step out of the room. I was like, when you are ready to discuss a matter, then we can come back to the table and be able to discuss in a way that we can move forward. And so and that calmed everybody down, because if they didn't have my signature, they couldn't move forward. So in a way, you had to, you know, make sure that I wield some type of influence and power to say, hey, you know, we cannot operate this way, and be able to control that room so that everybody can communicate with each other. So, you know, because of that, we were able to move forward. They were able to get my signature, and then they would sign over that particular radar system over to air traffic control.
Thank you. Okay, up next we have Ms. Basine.
Hello.
Nice to see you. So my question is, what is your perception of the teaching and learning environment in Norfolk Public Schools and its impact, well, rather, school climate, and its impact on student outcomes? And the second part is, as a board member, what policies would you propose, support, or remove to reach that, to improve student outcomes?
Okay, so let me have you repeat the first part of the question.
What is your perception of the teaching and learning environment and its impact on student outcomes?
The perception of the teaching and learning environment right now in today's climate is very stressful, very, and some community members say that it's combative. However, we cannot forget, you know, that we have dedicated educators and administrators who are there every day because they believe in our students, they believe in the profession that they do. And so in light of all of that, my perception is that we have an opportunity to build better. And as a school board member, it is up to me to make sure that I hear what's happening out on the ground and be able to translate what's happening out on the ground into policy, overarching policy, in order to make sure that the solution is for the betterment of everyone involved. You know, what policies would I like to see? I mean, there's lots of issues that are out on the table. It's like, and people come to school board members all the time, like, I need help with this, I need help with that. And it is up to the school board member to be able to say, okay, let me be that 211 resource for you. Let me lead and guide you on what, who can help. But let me look at this overarching issue and to see if this is a district-wide problem, it's something that's in particular schools, and how in the world I'll be able to translate that into policy to say, hey, I think we need to move this forward. Let me look at this data. Let me interpret the context of this data. Let me add what's happening out in the community to what this data says, and what is the overarching policy that I can do to move forward.
Thank you. Up next, we have Ms. Campson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What are your primary areas of concern regarding student academic achievement in Norfolk Public Schools? And what strategies would you promote to address those concerns?
Here are some primary areas of concerns that has been pressing lately. One, that of academic achievement, of course. We can all look at the numbers and we can compare them to what the rest of the state says of where Norfolk Public Schools is. I can look at the numbers of the schools, the 11 and 12 schools that are in my ward, and say, hey, this is concerning between math, reading, history, science. So academic achievement, of course, and right now there is a need for a balance of challenges dealing with explosive, disruptive, aggressive behavior within schools. Students are experiencing a lot of challenges, have to reacclimate themselves in interpersonal relationships due to being sheltering in place. And experiencing school online. So having students to be able to adapt their mental instability, not just with them, but their parents, and also with the socioeconomic conditions that impact our students' everyday lives. And so those are some of the top three areas that I'm concerned about. And like I said, that impacts, some of those underlying conditions impact their academic achievement. It impacts what happens in this district. It impacts our educators and our administrators as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and next we have Mr. Jordan's question.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Data shows that Ward 4 has more children living there than Wards 1 through 5, and has the largest percentage of African Americans than all of the wards. How do you see yourself representing the vision and values of the ward, especially around issues of equity, while serving the interests of all students, no matter where they live?
Yes, this this is not new as far as the makeup and the demographics of Ward 4. And so I see myself as a representative voice, as being an African-American woman living in Ward 4, and being able to present those perspectives and those lived experiences to policy, and to be able, and as someone who works in the community and connects with community members on a regular basis, and I can speak to what is happening, I can speak to the concerns, I can lead with empathy and be able to hear them where they are. And so I'm trying to remember the rest of your question.
Vision and values of the ward, especially around issues of equity, while serving the interests of all students, no matter where they live.
Exactly. And so I think that the primary purpose, or from my ideology standpoint of what public education is supposed to be, is that we, allowing students to have equitable access, equitable opportunity, and equitable resources in order to make sure that we bring them to a place where they're going to be productive members of an ever-evolving global society. And so my work in STEM speaks to that, because we are, STEM is an area where you don't see many African Americans, you don't see many women in that field, so it's a constant advocacy to bring forth opportunity and bring forth access to members who have been underutilized, members who have been minoritized in a particular industry. And so I can speak to that perspective as a representative of my ward to when we're implementing policy that impacts the entire district. However, you know, I am concerned about what happens over the entirety of Norfolk Public Schools because it's not just a Ward 4 problem, it's a problem across the district. And so when I look at research, when I go forth and read, and when I go forth and look at data, when I go forth and talk to members, I can bring all of that perspective, my knowledge and experience, as well as my drive for equity, for access and opportunity to the table. And so that's how I will operate as a school board member.
Thank you. So everyone has asked their questions.
Okay.
And so I want to give you some time. We have, let's see. Yeah, we have about 6 or 7 minutes. If you have any questions for us, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. I do have a few questions. Thank you for all of your questions, and that helps me to gather the information that I had. I wanted to know what is your guiding rubric of how you're going to evaluate candidates for this seat. So how will you rate each candidate that's fair and that's equitable and that's objective?
I'm sorry?
Is there a scoring metric?
We're answering.
So what we've done is the reason that, our methodology is we came up with the same questions for
Okay.
everyone. So everyone will get the exact same questions, same procedure for each of the interviews. And then we're going to deliberate and discuss, to our notes and our impressions. And then we'll take a vote.
Okay. I know that this is very urgent and necessary to fill this seat. How will you ensure a successful onboarding of a new appointee to make sure, I know there's going to be a fast learning curve, to make sure that they are acclimated to all the state and local guidelines as a public official?
Well, one of the things that we've already begun talking about that plan, and one of the things, we're working with our attorney to make sure that you have all of the legal requirements, review of COIA and FOIA, so there's some onboarding training that is required through that. And there's also the legal swearing in. And so depending on whether we come to a decision today, or if we will come to a decision at our December 15th meeting, we're trying to plan out what that timeline looks like, because the person that we select is not able to participate in school board business until they're officially, legally sworn in.
Gotcha.
And so the timeline's our decision-making will dictate that timeline, but we are required to select someone by December 18th. I use December 15th as the reference because that is our last meeting in December, or before the 18th. And so our goal is to have somebody sworn in to, if not by the 15th, then to fully participate in our January meetings.
Okay.
And so you'll meet with Ms. Tanner, our clerk, for the documentation that you'll need, and it is a bit of, like they always say, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but drinking from a fire hose at the beginning, but we're going to try to make it as organized as possible. So I would suggest to any candidate to go back and look at our meetings over the past 6 months at least, or further back if you can. I hope your interest in the school board, because I know you've been interested in a while, that you've been paying attention to what, the issues that are important to our district at this time. And of course, you can call on any of us if you have any other specific questions when that time comes.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was actually my last question, is to remind me of your timeline. So you will be able to have a decision by what time, you'll inform candidates by what date, and then how will you inform the public?
We'll have a press release for the public
Okay,
once that candidate is the candidate selected. But again, we do have deliberation time today, where, I'd love to come out with an answer today. But if not, the next time we meet would be the 15th to decide.
okay, great. One last question. I have I'm fortunate enough to know many of you for work out in the field. How will you continue to develop unity among your members on this board so that you can, be a driving force for success of our district?
That's a good question. Of course, team building is a constant, it's a constant journey.
Okay.
And so we are going to continue with training and governance training in particular, and adopting our goal, what we are calling goals and guardrails, for our to give clear expectations and direction to our superintendent and the administration. I feel like every time we're together, every time we're having a conversation, is an opportunity to build on our relationships and improve our relationships. So, there's the formal and there's the informal, and I think we should all be
Sure.
working at that.
Great. All right, I think that's all the questions I have. I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, and I thank you for applying for this position. And as I said, as soon as we make a decision, we will let you know.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome. We're going to go into what's our timeline? So our next, I don't have the schedule in front
Time
of me.
is the next appointment.
And then you can come back up there.
We have 15 minutes.
Okay.
So we're going to recess until 12:45.
We talked into recess?
12:45? What time is it? We have 15 minutes?
I think they have a candidate.
What was the schedule again?
Thank you, thank you. Now, are we removing our mask, or do I keep it on? What's the standard?
We're all keeping ours on,
Okay.
so that's up to you. So again, welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for applying for the Ward 4 school board position. Just to tell you what to expect, we each have a question we're each going to answer, so there will be 6 questions for you. We only have 30 minutes total time, and so we ask you to respect that. And if we have time at the end of our questioning, then that'll allow you to ask us questions if you have them prepared. Okay? Are you ready to begin?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Gabriel is going to start us off.
Welcome. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming. Start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and why you wish to serve on the Norfolk School Board.
Yes, a little bit about myself in a nutshell. I've been in education over 30 years. I've been a public school teacher. As a matter of fact, I was a math teacher. I've also worked in admissions and recruitment at a university. So, and I was admissions and recruitment for teachers also. And I've been in higher ed for about 27 years. So that's really my niche. So most of my career I've been in higher ed at the college level, and I totally understand the connect between public education, K-12, and the university, because I've worked in both entities and I know how they connect and how important they are. So my major niche has been at the university. I'm now a full professor at Norfolk State University, which I've been 18 years. I've also been the dean of the School of Education, and my area of expertise is teacher education. So that is my area that I teach. I prepare teachers, many of whom who are teachers in Norfolk Public Schools that I've taught to become great teachers and principals and administrators here in Norfolk Public Schools. So I feel very strong about education, and that's my background. That's what I love. That's what I do. That's what I am. So that's in a nutshell about who I am.
Thank you. Okay, up next we have Mr. Clanton.
Welcome. So what is your understanding of the role of a school board member, and how do you intend to accomplish it?
My understanding of a school board member is to assist with a team of other members to set goals, to set the vision, and to also develop policy to make Norfolk Public Schools the best in the world. And that's what I see my role as a board member, and to assist and collaborate with other board members to do that. And of course, when I think of schools, and of course, like I said, I've been in education for 30 years, it is all about the children. So being on a school board, when we set visions and set policies and set goals, I see, my vision is that it is all about the children and pushing them to their highest potential through what we all decide collaboratively as a board. Help push the system.
Thank you.
That's how I see it.
Okay. My question's up next. So working with a team of individuals with diverse perspectives can sometimes result in conflicts. Describe a situation in which you had a conflict with a team member and what strategies you used to resolve the conflict.
That's a very good question. And I think conflict can be very healthy. That's how I'm going to start, because I think diversity is very important. I think it's important to work with people who have different ideas and different backgrounds, and they see the world differently, because I think you come up with some of the best results when you have all those differences, men, women, different, I mean, we need all of that when we are trying to make decisions. I think that's very important. And in doing that, you come up with some of, like I said, some of the best results. But a good example that I can think of is at a university that I work, and I won't name the university, but we were working on trying to establish or reestablish our admission standards to how students could get into our grad program, create a GPA, and create some other metrics that students can get into the grad program. And my perspective was very different than a colleague of mine, and it got really heated, some of our discussions, because he felt that we really needed to up our ante, that we really need to up our standards into our grad program. And eventually, how I think I got to the point of maybe solving the issue, I said, let's study the data. Let's look at the data, because we've had grad students. I said, let's look at the last 2 years of data, looking at the students that we've admitted, the students who were accepted, and let's look at their profiles to determine what our best criteria, not, because I know he felt like we needed to just make our program comparable to Yale or Harvard. I mean, he was saying all this kind of stuff. And I said, look, let's just look at the data. And we looked at the data. And it showed that our profile, our average profile student was, I'm just being hypothetical, was a 2.87. That was our average graduate GPA. Even though he was pushing, we ought to be 3.5, and then, students with 3.5s will apply if we put it at 3.5. And I said, let's let the data drive this. Let's let the data drive this. And he calmed down, and then the whole group sort of got involved. So yeah, let's look at the data. And when we all looked at the data, we figured out that the best profile that we need to look for should be based on our data and our past students, and not this number, this pie in the sky. And so the data sort of helped to guide us, and to me, that was part of the solution. There was no need to keep going back and forth about, our vision, our ideas. Let's look at the data. And I have this saying that data tells the story, but data is the story. I think that's kind of powerful. And in education, that we live by that. As a teacher, as an administrator, as a dean, as a professor, as an accreditation board member, I mean, we live by data. That's what we live by.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Up next, we have Ms. Bassine's question.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rawson. So my question is, what is your perception of the teaching and learning environment in Norfolk Public Schools and its impact on school climate and student outcomes? And as a board member, what policies would you propose, support, or remove related to this?
Okay. Let me see. What's the first part again?
What is your perception of the teaching and learning environment in Norfolk Public Schools?
Okay. What is my perception? My perception is that teachers work very, 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 very hard in Norfolk Public Schools to accommodate all the needs that we have. We are a very diverse school system. We're a very diverse urban school system. And so within that, there are lots of students and lots of needs and lots of backgrounds. And so my perception is that Norfolk Public School teachers and schools work very hard to accommodate and work with our students. I do see that, I feel that, I think that's a perception. I think we all know that. We also know that there are school districts in the area that may not be as diverse and may not have to do as many accommodations as perhaps Norfolk Public Schools, but we know that we work very hard to meet the needs of our students, and that is known. And as a teacher, educator, provider, we prepare teachers to be ready for that when we send them to Norfolk Public Schools, to be ready to work with very diverse students, diverse population, to accommodate students, and also, of course, to be driven by the data. That's very important, is to be driven by the data. And what was the other part?
The other part was, as a board member, what policies would you support, propose, or remove, from our existing policies,
Okay.
Related to the teaching and learning environment?
I think in terms of the policy, I think we have to kind of look at that holistically in terms of policy that would drive that. And I think perhaps, we have committees or we have subgroups who look at specific things that may, and then come together with some of our discussions to also talk to the superintendent about what's going on, give us data so that we can look at maybe formulating some kind of policy. I think one of the things that as an educator, and as a leader, I promote empowerment to our stakeholders, which are, our teachers, our staff, people in the community, parents, families, governmental agencies. I think it's important that we empower these people to help us to understand what's going on and to hear their voices. It's like, I want to be heard. And sometimes when I talk to teachers and even pre-service teachers, they want to be heard. And I think we have to do that. We're going to support what teachers do and what schools do. We have to listen to them to get more understanding. Because sometimes if you don't listen, you really don't know what's going on. So I have this thing that, and I guess that comes from being a very good trained teacher, that I had to listen to my students. I had to listen to them to understand, what they were going through, what they were feeling, what they didn't understand, what they were confused about. I had to do that. And I think in any role that I assume, I follow that same path, is that I listen to get more understanding. And you have to empower people for them to talk to you. I'm not sure whether I hit every part or not.
You did.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Okay. Next, we have Ms. Campson's question.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I think one concern could be, and I'm just, basing it on, things that I see and I observed and, and listening to some of the meetings is, and of course it's connected to what I do, is that I think it's very important that we have highly qualified teachers, because as a teacher, when I was teacher of the year in North Carolina, in my early years, that was the biggest thing that I talked about, is that teachers are the heart of education. I mean, we're where the action is, I would say in my spiels as I traveled North Carolina, is that teachers, we're where the action really is. And so having highly qualified, committed teachers is very, 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 very important in helping to close the achievement gap, helping to get all of our schools accredited, helping to, our students to be all that they can be and to reach their full potential. We have to have highly qualified teachers, and that kind of connects with the partnership with universities and other agencies to help us do that. So at Norfolk State, we hope we do that for Norfolk Public Schools. We hope we provide very highly qualified, competent, intelligent, competent teachers who come in to help serve Norfolk Public Schools in terms of being a teacher. In terms of policy, as a school board member, I guess we would have to kind of, again, look at the data to find out what percentage of our teachers are deemed highly qualified, because all that data is available. Any school system would know exactly, they would say, well, 80% of your teachers are highly qualified, 20% are not, or they're working on it or whatever. But I know increasing that number, and maybe even looking at, with the administration, even looking at, systems or professional development, which is very critical also, to help our teachers get there, so that we provide the best quality education for our students. And that's what drives me to even consider, and even when I ran for school board in 2018, that was one of my driving forces, was to help with looking at the whole notion of teacher shortage and teacher retention and highly qualified teachers. That was sort of driving force for me to even want to try to be on the school board and to be of service. Yes.
Okay, and your last question is from Mr. Jordan.
Good to see you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Data show that Ward 4 has more children living there than Wards 1 through 5, and has the largest percentage of African Americans than all of the wards. How do you see yourself representing the vision and values of the ward, especially around issues of equity, while serving the interests of all students, no matter where they live?
That's very realistic, and the data, told me that when I was running back in 2018, the demographics of my ward and how they needed advocacy and how they needed support. And I think that's very, very important, that I do represent, that ward. And I think a lot of my thinking about education would embrace any ward, actually. When you talk about achievement gaps, when you talk about opportunity gaps, when you talk about parental involvement, when you talk about, resources, when you talk about funding, I think actually it would impact any ward. And I think some of the notions I have and some of the ideas and my experiences, I think would embrace any ward, even though I know the demographic of my ward, but I think some of my notions and some of my ideas would probably enhance any ward. And I also realize that I think being a board member that I do represent, Norfolk. I represent the city of Norfolk. But I do totally understand my ward and its demographics. But I think I have to see it sort of holistically and even engage other ward members to kind of see the big picture in terms of where we are as a school system, because I know we all represent different wards, but I think we also represent all the children of Norfolk. And I sort of have to have that mindset at the same time. But I think a lot of the way I feel about education and how things can be done, I think would enhance anyone, and in particular, Ward 4.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
We have about 15 minutes.
Okay.
So if you have any questions for us, this is your opportunity to ask them.
I think my biggest question is, how have you all dealt with the challenge of COVID and student learning and outcomes and teacher shortages? It's like that's an interesting, that's been on my mind a lot because when the pandemic started, I was a dean of the School of Education, and everything just kind of went crazy. My student teachers could no longer go into the schools. They had to, so much was changing, and I just sort of always thought about, school systems and how they were dealing. So it's just more about, that challenge, and how do we even look at that challenge, or how do we even deal with that challenge in itself?
I'll allow everyone to answer a piece of it, because it's a big question.
It is, but just in
of
general.
course, when you look back and, March of 2020, it was new to everyone. And so what I will say, in my opinion, about what we did well is we took a slow and steady approach moving forward while other districts were going back to school and then flip-flopping. We were watching what was going on, and we have strong I believe we have strong leadership. Our superintendent, we allowed her to do her job and guide the way, and so that helped us to be very intentional as we took each step forward and not go back and forth. And also, like every district, we had extra funding. We took every opportunity whenever there were new grants coming out that would allow us to supply more resources for when we would be ready to open and invite, welcome our teachers, staff, and students and families back into the schools. That we had all the PPE equipment, and we were practicing all the protocols necessary to create a healthy environment. And I think we've continued to do that. More recently, what's taking effect right now is the vaccination of our teachers and staff, mandatory. And so we're up against the January 3rd deadline for that. And I think we're doing pretty well. We have a very high percentage of our teachers and staff already vaccinated. You're always going to have some that aren't, and we have protocols in place for that as well. So I'll open it to anyone else who wants to add their opinions on how we've done. Go ahead.
Dr. Birdsong is an excellent superintendent, and as you had mentioned before in your leadership capacity, you listened a lot. And I think what she had done and what all of us as board members have done is we listened to different stakeholder groups to identify what their concerns were. And then the second thing was we looked at the data. We not only looked at the data in the community, but we looked at Norfolk-specific data, and that's how we made some very difficult decisions, because there's no playbook for what we went through as a school division. You know, we have nearly 30,000 students in our division that we had to, their lives and the staff lives are in our hands, so it was no easy decision. So we looked at the data, we weighed costs and benefits, we had, we identified stressors with regards to online teaching, barriers to education, and we pivoted, and we still continue to pivot when necessary based upon the feedback that is received. And we are still trying to, this process of coming out of the educational gaps and the deficit that's there is going to be a long haul for us. But I do think that once we all come together, you know, as a full board, then we'll be able to continue to address those issues. But that's how I think we've been able to really do our best that we can for the division.
Great, yes.
Anyone else? Good. Do you have any other questions for us?
Thank you. That's the only question I had, because it was just kind of on my mind, the whole, you know, just kind of reeling back, because it's still going on, actually, so it's
Yeah.
not like, we're not over it yet. It's not done.
Never gonna be over.
So, yeah, so it's not done, not sure when. But that was just a thought that I had in mind, that I know will be an ongoing issue.
Okay. Well, thank you for asking. And again, thank you for applying to the position for
Yes.
Ward 4. And we will let you know as soon as we have a decision.
Okay.
I'm hoping, you know, maybe we make a decision today. We're going to have deliberation after we meet with each of the candidates. But we also have, just so you have a full understanding of our deadline, we had 45 days, and so that deadline will be up December 18th to select someone for the position.
Okay.
And so, you know, it'd be great if we could select someone today. But I'm also, it might be, if we can't, then it'll be at our December 15th business meeting is the next time we'll meet. And of
Okay.
course, that still is within our 45 days.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. It was so good seeing everyone, and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you
as
so
well.
much.
Okay, we'll take a 15-minute recess then. have a seat up here at the table for you, and there's a pen, a notepad, and some water.
How's everyone?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, I'm good.
So the interview is going to be 30 minutes long, and each of us will ask you one question. So I just wanted you to be able to be mindful of the time so that you have enough time to answer the question. And,
Okay.
And if we finish before that 30-minute time, that will give you the opportunity to ask us questions.
Okay,
Okay, are you ready to begin?
I'm ready.
Okay, we're going to start with Dr. Gabriel's question.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you would like to serve on the Norfolk School Board. Oh, okay. Well, my name is Tornette Coffey Perkins. I would like to serve on the Norfolk School Board because I'm pretty much born and raised in this area. I currently work over at Norfolk General at the Ambulatory Care Clinic. That is an outpatient clinic for the indigent residents in the community. I've been doing that for just shy of 21 years now. So I see a lot of the individuals that also live in Ward 4. They come there for primary care, and it gives me the opportunity to not only converse with the patients with respect to what's going on with their medical issues, but also life issues as well, to include things that may be going on in the community, issues, within the school system, things that they feel are pressing with respect to their children and how that impacts their overall health, because it's all relative.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clanton?
Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
So what is your understanding of the role of a school board member, and how do you intend to accomplish it?
Well, from my understanding, the role of a school board member is to basically look at metrics, data of what's going on within the different schools, looking at that information to figure out ways that they can best implement different policy and procedure to help meet stated objectives. Also, making sure that they're looking at it in a more broad perspective with respect to making sure that we're being fair and impartial, that everyone is getting the resources and the tools that they need to be able to be successful. Working closely with not only the superintendent, but also taking into consideration the views and the opinions of the parents, the teachers, and even the students as well.
All right, I'm the third one.
Okay.
So working with a team of individuals with diverse perspectives can sometimes result in conflicts. Describe a situation in which you had a conflict with a team member and what strategies you used to resolve the conflict.
Oh. Well, as you can imagine, working and being in leadership of a clinic that serves indigent residents, I'm always having to advocate to make sure that they have the tools and resources that they need as compared to other subsets. And so in terms of conflict, I don't like to necessarily use that word, because I feel like when you use conflict, is more so when people take situations personally and they're inserting their personal views and opinions on things, as opposed to looking at it more so like a crucial type of conversation with that individual, and just realizing that there may be a difference of opinion. So a situation in which there was a crucial conversation that I had to have was with respect to when the COVID vaccine became available, and it was essentially stated that the individuals that came to my facility because of the vaccine hesitancy wouldn't want it, and so therefore it wasn't going to be provided. And so just being able to, remove myself from that as far as whether or not I would get it, but just making sure that I can advocate for those patients to where if they did want it, it would be available. But getting those individuals to see that, they can't look at it from the perspective of, well, it's what I think this individual may want, but just, making it available to the people.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Up next, we have Ms. Bassine's question.
Hello.
Hi.
So what is your perception of the teaching and learning environment in Norfolk Public Schools and its impact on school climate and student outcomes? And as a board member, what policies would you propose, support, or remove related to this?
Well, I would say that right now I feel as if the climate with respect to Norfolk Public Schools is fractured, for lack of a better word. I think that it's very multifactorial, and there are a lot of things that are going on, not only with the pandemic, but especially, in terms of safety, not only within the school system, but even in the communities that the students have to go back to. And so I feel that, some policies or, procedures or strategies that we can implement is, looking at, how can we help, the whole student in terms of all of those areas, not just looking at, things that we need to do academically for that student, but ways that we can be able to provide resources to help them in those other areas. As, we just basically need to realize that all of those factors come into play in terms of them being able to flourish and thrive as a student. So, maybe that can be an example of having student advisory panels, for them to, give us their feedback and their input as far as what they feel is, something that's needed and more important in ways that we can be able to support them. You're welcome.
Next up, we have Ms. Campson's question.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What are your primary areas, what are your primary areas of concern regarding student achievement, student academic achievement in Norfolk Public Schools, and what strategies would you promote to address those concerns?
It's just basically piggybacking on the response that I just gave, just realizing that we have to look at the whole student. My primary area of concern naturally being in healthcare is with respect to the pandemic and how students got behind because they had to be home for a lot of that learning and kind of sheltering there, not really having that engagement, with not only the community, but also with their counterparts as well. So, looking at it in terms of, mental health and stability, I feel like, that's a really big thing in terms of helping students, counseling services, and just ways to help them be able to navigate everything that's going on in the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, and then your final question will come from Mr. Jordan.
Hi, good
Afternoon.
afternoon.
And you may take your time in answering.
Okay.
Data show that Ward 4 has more children living there than Wards 1 through 5 and has the largest percentage of African Americans than all of the wards. How do you see yourself representing the vision and values of the ward, especially around issues of equity, while serving the interests of all students, no matter where they live?
That's a good question. Thank you for that. I'm the chair, or the co-chair rather, of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council at Norfolk General Hospital, and that was a new initiative that came about due to all of the social justice issues that we've been having going on as of late. And so I've been able to really just immerse myself in a lot of I wouldn't say necessarily nuances, but just bringing things to people's attention. And one of the things that I had to bring to their attention is that there is a distinction between equity and equality. And so just realizing that a lot of people feel as if they're being equal, it doesn't mean that you're being equitable. So essentially we have to look and make sure that everybody's on not only the same level playing field, but that we're giving them those extra tools and resources. And I realized that in Ward 4 the area is very dense, and it's also dense with respect to individuals that historically have been disproportionately affected when it comes to resources and things like that. So again, because I'm a product of Ward 4, I live in the community, I know the parents and neighbors, and just talking with them and feeling them out as far as ways that they feel they can get more resources from the school board in terms of helping their students learn and grow. You're welcome.
Okay, well, that concludes our question portion
Oh, wow.
of your
Yeah,
interview.
I was talking too fast then because that went by.
I know, it does, it's like a blink. So again, this is the opportunity, if you have questions for us, please take that time right now.
Yes, so I had a few questions. The first question was, I did have an opportunity to look on the school board's website when the position was first posted, and it talked about a timeline of how when the applications were due on November 23rd, and then through the continuum of when you all would make the decision on December 15th. But with the holiday coming up, after you make your decision on December 15th, what is the actual start date for the role?
Okay, the statute is that we have 45 days to select a school board, select a candidate for the Ward 4 position on the school board.
So
And-
45 days after the 15th of December?
No, from the time of the resignation of the previous
Gotcha.
school board member.
Okay.
So that puts us at December 18th. We will deliberate after the interviews are completed today. And so, there's potential that we could decide today. If not, then the next time that we meet is December 15th for our business meeting.
Okay.
And so we could, that would be our opportunity before the 18th deadline to name the person.
Okay.
And then once we do name, whether it's today or on the 15th, we need to go through the legal process of having that person sworn in. And so that would be the first step, to be sworn in, because you can't participate in
Correct.
school board business until that legally happens. And then there'll be an onboarding process. As soon as we name someone, we'd like to get them onboarded with some of the other legal documentation for COIA and FOIA training and so forth.
That was actually going to be my second question, is what was the orientation process?
What I would recommend, if you haven't been doing already, is at least go back to our last 6 months and familiarize yourself with some of the topics that we're working on with our school board and our discussion. We are going to, and also our agendas are posted on board docs and our meeting dates and so forth. You could, our clerk, Ms. Karen Tanner, will help with some of the processes and reaching out to you as she has with the interview setup. And we're going to continue with governance training is always a very important, our professional development training. And right now we've developed some goals and guardrails. So you're coming in at a pretty good time where we're going to review our goals and guardrails, and you'll be brought in on that discussion. What am I forgetting? Yes, so our superintendent can provide other information for you as well. So any, budget, of course, we're going into a budget process. We'll have our first budget hearing on the 15th. I mean, so you're kind of, not to say there's the best time, but, it's always drinking through a fire hose at first, but we're going to work with you to make, if you're selected, to make that process as easy as we can.
As painless as possible.
Right, as painless as possible. Perfect. For a medical professional, it's exactly, I guess, the appropriate use. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Okay. And kind of piggybacking on the comment that you just made, I'm not sure as far as the resume of all the other individuals that have interviewed thus far, but if I'm privy to this information, is it anything in particular that the board is really looking for in terms of the individual specifically coming from an educational background, or were you looking for someone that's kind of more well-rounded, or what was that process like?
Well, there are no real qualifications other than the legal ones, that you live in the ward, that you're a qualified voter, which means you're 18 years of age and older. I'm trying to think, is there one I'm
So just
missing?
basically the questions that I had to answer before submitting the
Right.
application.
Right.
Okay.
And so, outside of that, we didn't want to be too prescriptive
Okay.
in what we were looking for. I'm sure obviously we all have ideas. But I will say that the people each of the candidates that we're interviewing are all highly qualified, and in the sense that are very knowledgeable people who have risen to the top as far as and leaving an impression with us on, people that we think that our city would be proud to have represent them.
Okay.
But I will say in my mind, I was very guarded to make sure that we didn't include any kind of qualifications that wouldn't be put on someone who is running for the position. As a candidate, an elected candidate, you're put through interview processes by the community. And so we have the opportunity to represent the community through this process. And so I consciously wanted to keep it open.
Fair enough.
Does
Those
anyone
were
else have any
all the questions I had.
impression you want to share?
Just one. Whoever ends up replacing Ms. Smith, there are hundreds of new school board members that'll be also taking office around the state. Recently just had November elections. And so typically in January, there's a statewide training for new members that everybody will get an invitation to.
Okay.
That, can be determined whether or not you decide to accept that invitation and participate. But there are other trainings and support that are also out there to assist new school board members with getting up and running in the role.
Okay, well, thank you for that information. It was just basically me trying to get background knowledge, because although not specifically coming from academia, just realizing that oftentimes, in my opinion, individuals that come into these roles, you kind of want to have those varying perspectives, and you don't want it to be so siloed and everyone having the same thinking because they're coming from the same background, but more or less bringing different perspectives. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions for us?
No, ma'am, that was it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for applying to the position for the Ward 4 member seat. And as soon as we make a decision, we will let you know.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity. It was a very meaningful experience, even just coming to interview. So, thank you.
Okay. All right.
You all have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
So what we can do now is motion to go into closed session as soon as Ms. Tanner comes back. Oh, you're back. That was quick. Okay. Can I get a motion to go into closed session?
Madam Chair, I move that we enter into closed session.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Tanner, please read the motion.
That members of the school board go into a closed session for the purposes which are set out in subsection A of section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended for discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of Norfolk Public Schools pursuant to subsection 1 of the Act. The subject of this portion of the session is the discussion of the qualifications of the specific applicants interviewed today to fill the seat on the school board of the city of Norfolk, recently vacated by Ms. Christine Smith. Consultation with legal counsel and briefing by staff members concerning actual or probable litigation or specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by the school board counsel pursuant to subsections 7 and 8 of the Act. The subject of this section of the motion is consultation and briefing in connection with the subject of subsection A of this motion, including but not limited to the discussion of statutory requirements of the Virginia Code regarding an elected school board's interim appointment to a seat on the board vacated prior to the end of the member's term. Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Okay. We're going to go to the conference room.
you.